Just a quick plug for the podcast before we get started, and I promise I'll keep this brief. If you love Imagination Skyway, you really should join our growing audience of 175 members at patreon.com/Imagination Skyway. Why, you ask? There are a few compelling reasons, starting with bonus episodes. I've really been working harder than ever on this member favorite, and some recent episodes include an in-depth breakdown on the math of Disney Vacation Club, plus my personal DVC calculator, a live walkthrough of Journey of Water inspired by Moana with some fun facts I learned from the Imagineers who built the attraction, and my complete experience building my first lightsaber live from Savi's workshop. And speaking of bonus episodes, you could have been listening to this episode of the show 2 weeks ago if you are a Patreon member. Another member favorite, which is accessible to free and paying subscribers, is our private Facebook group that includes weekly watch parties with other listeners of the show. There's also weekly Zoom calls with yours truly and a lot more bonus content to enjoy. The best part is you can sign up for a free membership or try our premium options free for 7 days, no strings attached. And if you ever sign up and decide it's not right for you, it's easy to cancel directly on Patreon. And importantly, I think it's worth mentioning this show would not be possible without our Patreon subscribers. So I want to extend my sincerest thanks to all Patreon subscribers listening, especially our paying subscribers. If you love this show, definitely consider joining or trying us out for free by heading to patreon.com/Imagination Skyway. One more time, that's patreon.com/Imagination Skyway. Welcome aboard Imagination Skyway, your grand podcast tour of the magic. I'm your host, Matthew Kroll, and in today's episode, we're going to discuss Tiana's Bayou adventure at the Magic Kingdom. I had the chance to ride Tiana's Bayou adventure for the first time during a D23 Gold member preview in late June, and it was an experience I couldn't wait to discuss on the show. In today's episode, I'm joined by Nick, the theme park dad, as we discuss not only our opinions of the attraction, but also the storyline for the ride, its cultural ties to New Orleans, its historic ties to Leah Chase, the real-life inspiration for Princess Tiana, its continuation of the Princess and the Frog storyline, and details you won't want to miss when you experience the attraction. Needless to say, I sincerely hope you enjoy this episode format, as it's a bit of a blend of our traditional attraction episodes and roundtable discussions. At the end of the show, we'll return to Imagination Central, where I'll share ways in which you could stay connected with Imagination Skyway, how you could discuss this topic with others, and how you can help support and inspire the future of this show. Please remain seated, keep your hands and arms inside the podcast at all times, and enjoy your grand circle tour aboard Imagination Skyway. So this summer, we had an opportunity to experience what's always exciting in the Disney community, a brand new attraction, which in this case is an attraction that's also technically a retheme from a former attraction, which I'm getting way ahead of myself. But either way, Tiana's Bayou Adventure opened this year in Walt Disney World and is opening later this year in Disneyland, depending on when you're listening to this episode. And I thought it would be really helpful, since I had the chance to experience this attraction, to do an episode all about it, especially if you haven't been on the attraction before, to walk through some details, things to look out for, and share some thoughts and opinions. But as always, these types of episodes are much better when there's a guest to banter with me, and I have a first-time guest on the podcast who I have wanted to get on the show for a while now. Finally had the opportunity to reach out and ask, and that is Nick, the theme park dad. How are you doing, Nick?
I'm doing great. I am so excited to be here. I feel honored for you to say that you've wanted to have me on here for a while. Like, that feels mind-blowing to me. So thank you for having me here. I appreciate it.
Well, maybe it's our shared Disney dad experience, or just I love the content you put out there, and it's always fun to especially follow you on Instagram and see what you and your family are up to. So it's a pleasure having you here. Because you are a new guest, before we get into this topic, I have to ask you some of my favorite rapid fire questions. And because you're a fellow podcaster, I do have one slightly different, maybe more challenging question. Maybe it's an easy question, but we'll see how it goes for you either way. But I'll start with the easy one. So I have 4 questions overall, 4 questions total. First being your favorite Disney park.
So is that at Walt Disney World or just kind of across the globe?
Anywhere around the world.
Okay. I have not been able to travel internationally, so I don't really know why I asked across the globe, because all of those parks are ruled out for me. I do have, like, I think at the top of my bucket list of places to travel is Tokyo Disneyland. I'd want to go to Tokyo Disney Sea so badly. It looks absolutely incredible. So that's like a place that I'd love to visit. And I think that it may take the top spot just based on everything that I see and people that visit that place. Everyone walks away saying it's like the best. So, but my favorite park is Disneyland in California. I love it. There's just something nostalgic about that place, walking down Main Street, walking where Walt walked. It's truly special. And I also just love it because a lot of my favorite places are in there. Like, one of my favorite lands is Galaxy's Edge. I'm a huge Star Wars guy. So the fact that that's at the Castle Park at Disneyland is a big win for me. But I just love being there. There's just an ambiance at Disneyland that I don't know that any other Disney park in the States has it. So,
no, I agree with you. And I've advocated for my listeners, who I'd say probably less than 30% have ever been to Disneyland, for them to actually make the trip. Yeah. And that's one of the many reasons. But the fact that Walt walked there, and just the history, and you're right, it's a very different type of park. Well, you're a Star Wars guy, so I'm curious about the number 2 question, which is your favorite Disney attraction, if this is a Star Wars attraction or something else.
It is actually Rise of the Resistance, which I feel like might even be somewhat of a basic answer. But to me, the sign of a solid Disney attraction is its ability to make you feel like a kid again. The way that it can, like, transport you to your childhood. And a lot of attractions do that for me, for sure. But I was a kid who grew up pretending that my bunk beds that I shared with my brother, like, that it was the Millennium Falcon, and that we were constantly on a mission. So I grew up when the prequels were, like, hitting theaters. So that was sort of my era of Star Wars. That's when I, like, started to really develop a passion for it. I watched the original movies before the prequels were released, but that was because we got them. I'll never forget Christmas one year. We got them, like, wrapped up under the tree. It was like a set of the 3 on VHS. We were, like, totally stoked. That's where our, like, passion for Star Wars developed, and then it just was really solidified as the prequels were released. But because I was such a fan as a child, getting to ride Rise of the Resistance is, like, it's next level for me. I'll never forget getting to ride it opening day here at Walt Disney World. That was a special experience in and of itself. But it truly just takes me to my childhood. Like, it makes me feel like a little kid again. I feel like I am truly taking on the First Order. And it's special. I love it so much. I love doing it with my boys and seeing, like, the excitement on their faces throughout the attraction as well.
Yeah, it's my favorite modern Disney attraction. When I ever categorize them, I always say that's my favorite one right now. It's all those reasons you mentioned. And all right, so we're going to shift away from the parks for the last 2 questions. And so third one here is your favorite Disney movie. I know you said you're a big Star Wars guy, so maybe you would say Star Wars. But if you're thinking within the, let's say, the Disney or the Pixar space, what would be your favorite film?
This is always such a challenging question for me. I'm so bad at picking favorites. Like, everything is my favorite, but not really.
To be fair, I think I've just committed myself to my favorites without ever even thinking about them anymore. I just said a long time ago, no, this is my favorite, and I'm just going to stick with it.
Is it okay if I list, like, a few favorites? Because I feel like, yes, will you accept that? Okay.
Well, I'll give a couple of honorary mentions in here.
Because growing up, I was born in the early 90s. And so growing up, for me, Lion King and Aladdin, those were my 2 favorite Disney movies. I had Lion King everything. I had Lion King sheets. I had Lion King backpack. I had Aladdin lunchbox. I had all of the things, birthday parties, all of the fun stuff. And I still love those movies so much. The Lion King in particular, massive fan of. But as we've gotten so many new pieces to the catalog that is Disney and Pixar, also, I was a kid who grew up on Toy Story. Love Toy Story so much. Toy Story 3 in particular, I'm a big fan of, because it wrecks my heart. But I would say Inside Out is one of my newest like favorite Disney Pixar movies, just because I think it's absolutely brilliant. I've said Inside Out before Inside Out 2 was released. I've just been a huge fan of Inside Out for a while, but I actually think I like Inside Out 2 more than I like the original. So
Wow. I mean,
I
it
know,
was a really good film.
I loved it so much. And I just think within both films, they're so brilliant in how they are able to tell the story of like the human psyche. I think you could do an entire podcast episode just about like the depth that is in those movies for sure. And it
Oh,
creates an awesome
100%.
opportunity to like, especially the second one, talk about mental health. And I'm a huge advocate for that for sure. So
Yeah, and I love that. I love that about what you promote as well. I think it's really important.
yeah, thank you.
So this last question is the a little bit more challenging, but it's specific, and it will be a good transition into our topic today. And so my last question is, what is your favorite character from The Princess and the Frog?
Okay. I would say two characters pop into my brain immediately. Ray, I'd probably have to go with Ray, but like in terms of like tragic Disney deaths, like his is far up there, and it is brutal. Like we watch that movie. We actually watch that movie every year on Mardi Gras. That's like what we go to bed to.
That's cool.
My wife has family originally from New Orleans, and so I didn't know much about Mardi Gras. Until I started dating my wife. I didn't even know what a king cake was until we started dating. But it's so every year we celebrate Mardi Gras as a family. It's always a lot of fun. We do like a couple of fun things for it. But yeah, we end our night watching Princess and the Frog. And every year I'm just kind of flabbergasted as to how Ray's tragic departure takes place. But I don't know. I love it. He's so happy. He's so down for a good time, and he has his hopes and dreams met at the end of the movie. So,
Yeah, he definitely does, and I agree. It's a very tragic ending,
yeah,
and one that it takes. Mufasa's ending was already risky, being 32 minutes into
trauma.
the film. Very traumatic. Yeah, having Ray's basically at the end of the film is a very different
Oh,
feeling.
it's just a heartbreaker. Yeah, you
It
feel
is.
like and it comes out of nowhere, really. Like you just don't expect it, but it's very good.
Yeah.
Lewis is up there for me as well. Love that guy.
Yeah, he's fantastic. All right, so I mean, this transitions us into the topic today, which is Tiana's Bayou adventure. And I thought the way we would walk through this is by first going back to the earliest announcements when we heard about this new attraction coming to Magic Kingdom and to Disneyland, and then walk through a little bit chronologically to talk about the details, everything we learned about the attraction. We'll discuss our thoughts riding the attraction and leave with some closing thoughts. But I've got some questions to guide our conversation over the next little bit. So, like I said, I want to start by going back to what was 2020 when Disney announced that Splash Mountain was going to be closing to be rethemed to a Princess and the Frog themed attraction. I know that among the Disney fan community, there were lots of sentiments. Splash Mountain was an attraction that goes back to the second generation of Walt Disney Imagineering. Folks like you and me, we kind of grew up with it. Our parents, my parents, it wasn't their opening day, but learned to or came to love the attraction as well. So what was sort of your initial reaction when you heard the news about this new attraction coming to Magic Kingdom and Disneyland?
I was very excited. So I grew up in Central Florida. I grew up going to Walt Disney World. A lot of my childhood memories are centered around being at the parks. I was always like a mission for me and my siblings after fireworks to see if we could accomplish all three mountains. So I want that's important context because it was an attraction that was special to me for sure. Like it wasn't something that I was very nonchalant about. Like I have a lot of childhood memories on Splash Mountain. I have old photos of us riding as a family, like printouts from the attraction for sure. So, when they made the announcement though, I am in the category of people that is all about like moving on, moving forward. I love new things. I think that like reinventing the wheel is always something that I'm an advocate for. There's not usually, it would take a lot for there to be an attraction that they said that they were going to get rid of that would like really break my heart. And there are some of those for sure, but Splash Mountain wasn't really necessarily up on the list for me. And knowing that the attraction itself, in terms of the way that the ride is, wasn't completely going away, that also meant a lot to me. And Princess and the Frog is a movie that's special to our family because we watch it every year. So
Yeah.
I was excited. I say all that to say, like, I was excited. I was looking forward to it. And really, the original concept art that we got for the attraction was absolutely beautiful. It was stunning. It looked incredible. And I think it also came at a period of time where it needed to come in terms of what we were getting for representation in the parks. And I think that that's another reason why I was excited about it. I was thankful that we were having a moment to, so for context, in terms of representation, my mom is Cuban, so I'm half Hispanic. And my wife and I, we adopted our youngest son from Colombia. And so I love having people of color represented in the parks for sure. And I think we need more of that. So I was looking forward to it for multiple reasons, for a love for Princess and the Frog, a love for more representation in the parks, and just because I like fresh new things. So
Yeah, I was absolutely in the same camp as you. I was very excited about this change, and I'm the same belief. I think that especially when you look at what Walt wanted, Walt always wanted progress.
yeah,
One of my frequent guests, Philander, I think that he has a great way of putting it, which is that Walt, if you were to go back to Disneyland and walk through Fantasyland, he'd ride Peter Pan's flight. He'd say, "This is still here. These things aren't flying now. Like why we haven't thought of anything to change this to?" But he was always someone who was trying to think about what was next and what was better, and constantly one-upping what he did in the past. But so, for that reason, I'm always in the same boat. And to me, this felt very similar to the transformation of Maelstrom to Frozen Ever After. They pretty much kept the same track for that. We actually got an extra few seconds of ride time out of the transformation because they now have one load unload area, except instead of two separate areas. So we got a little extra, small extra ride scene out of it. But very similar idea where we were now going to be getting a new storyline, but the same ride system, the same ride layout, just sort of spruced up and with a new storyline. And so I was excited about that. Princess and the Frog, I had said for a long time that Tiana's my favorite Disney princess. So I was excited to see her represented. And also because I knew that at the time I didn't know it, but a year later, finding out that we were going to be expecting a daughter, my firstborn, and now having another daughter, so having two daughters, having a princess attraction as a thrill ride was kind of cool. So I was really excited about all those things. The idea of representation being a very important one as well. And like you, I never. While I loved riding Splash Mountain, I never had an emotional attachment to Splash Mountain though. So I know that there are some people who have an emotional attachment to certain attractions, and then that completely gives you a different perception when that attraction changes. So that I completely, can empathize with, but anyway, long story short, I agree. I was very excited. Love the early concept art as well, and I was excited about the details that were announced. And one of the things that I got a lot of questions about, I don't know if you got the same questions when people were, if they asked you about your thoughts about the attraction changing, but the placement of it. So in Disneyland, it was a no-brainer, right? We had right next to New Orleans Square, a new attraction based on a story that took place in New Orleans with critters and critter country. So it absolutely fit very, very cleanly. And a lot of people, especially because I focus on Imagineering and a lot of what I talk about, were asking me the fit in Frontierland, and having something that's based in New Orleans and a time period that wasn't exactly, it were almost 100 years, about 60, 70 years after technically what Splash Mountain's based on. But did you have any of those questions, or did that even cross your mind about the placement, and how did you, what were some of the realizations you made, or, questions you had around that setting and storyline in Frontierland?
Absolutely. And to be honest, not even just questions from my audience, but just questions for myself, like trying to figure out how Tiana's Bayou Adventure sits next to Thunder Mountain. Then you've got like Pecos Bill, between, it's literally sitting between two very like Western themed attractions for sure. And I still sort of have that question. For me, it fits. Like for me, it works. I don't think that it sticks out necessarily. I think that like in terms of like Western, the frontier to me is not limited to just like the Wild West, and so I think that it works for me. I think you've got Golden Oak Outpost now with, and I hope I'm not like spoiling any thunder here, but you've got all the fun food over there that is themed to Tiana's and to the attraction, and I think that food works there. But do I think it would be nice to have a little bit more of a buy-in? Yeah, absolutely. I'm jealous of how Disneyland has New Orleans Square and where this sits with regards to New Orleans Square. I think that it is, and also just Tiana's place that's opened over at Disneyland as well. Like the idea of being able to ride this attraction and then walk into Tiana's place, I am so envious of for what they have at Disneyland compared to here at Walt Disney World. But yeah. I don't know if that specifically answers your question. I still have some questions of like, I get it, but do I fully get it? I don't know.
Yeah. So I can help answer some of those questions for you and walk through how I thought about this. So if we are to question Tiana's Bayou Adventure's placement, we also have to question Splash Mountain's placement.
Right.
So when we go back to the setting and the timeline for Splash Mountain, loosely based on Song of the South, it's really just featuring characters from Song of the South. But in either case, that location is actually Georgia. So we're talking about the South.
Okay.
And and the time period is Reconstruction era, so 1860s, 1870s. Louisiana, to me, New Orleans being the gateway to the West. I know that's technically Mississippi, but along the Mississippi River, that dividing line being sort of the gateway to the West, and having that be really at the entrance coming from Caribbean Plaza over into Frontierland, be a sort of like an entry point into Frontierland, fits well for me from a thematic perspective when you think about the setting compared to especially what you think about what it was before. And the other aspect of this that I like is the timeline. So taking place in about the 1920s, 1930s, because it's really after the events of the film, follows more closely the timeline of Rivers of America, which takes us from the colonial era in Liberty Square up until the late 1800s at Pecos Bill. And so then you go cross beyond that into Tiana's Bayou Adventure in the early 20th century. And then Thunder Mountain, while it does follow the Gold Rush era, it's technically an abandoned Gold Rush era mining community. So you could theoretically have that be placed in almost any modern time still. So it for me, it follows the timeline of Rivers of America a little closer than Splash Mountain did. The placement, like I said, being Louisiana, I think is a better fit for the West. And when we think about Frontierland, even though it's not the quote unquote Wild West, it's still a kind of better fit than Georgia.
When
we think about that. Even though nothing clearly said it was Georgia, but when you look at the film it's based on, that kind of ties it back to it. The other thing I really liked what they did was when you look at Tiana's Bayou Adventure through Tom Sawyer Island, they blended in the foliage with the foliage on Tom Sawyer Island. So in the distance, it doesn't stand out as much, which is maybe a bad thing because it used to be that iconic. You see that sort of tree trunk that was at the top of the mountain through those trees, but now it really blends in very clearly. If you're on a mansion queue, you kind of have to squint to see where the mountain is blending with the foliage. But in any case, that to me always made sense. Plus the fact that if you are walking from Pirates of the Caribbean, you can almost think of yourself as like, and then crossing that bridge. Sort of crossing from the Caribbean over, let's say, like the Gulf of Mexico into
That's so good.
Louisiana, New Orleans. So for me, like, there's a lot of ways that it does, and I think some people will say like, well, you're just trying to shoehorn it in, but I think it was shoehorned in the way it was in 1989, or 1991, when Splash Mountain opened at Magic Kingdom. So, because that really was just duplicating what was over at Disneyland because it was so successful. Let's build it over at Magic Kingdom as well, and this is the place to put it. So anyway, like, we're splitting hairs in a lot of different ways, but I think it does still fit very well. And the Imagineers are masters at weaving in stories into, and they didn't even try to fit it. It's just, I think it works.
Yeah. No, I think part of it too for me is that I don't feel drawn or tied to Pecos Bill whatsoever. And so for me, I guess part of me also was sort of hoping for an overhaul of that restaurant as well. Like, in my mind, I was fine with seeing some of the theming of that change as well. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. And I know that this is another conversation for a different day, but we have no idea what the future of Frontierland's going to look like. I mean, we know that something is coming beyond Big Thunder Mountain, and will that fit thematically with Frontierland? Will it be its own new land? So many questions that I'm hoping in the next few weeks we have answers to. But
I hope so too.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what lies beyond Thunder Mountain, as it's been referred to. And I think that will also be interesting to see how they tell the story of the transition of that land as well, because it's not like Magic Kingdom. You have the way that the lands separate sort of revolve around the castle. This is going to be definitely different, like everything kind of revolves around that hub, whereas this is a branch off from Frontierland. So I'm interested to see what happens with that for sure.
Right. I totally agree. So that we're kind of talking a little bit about the history of this attraction. So let's maybe jump into the attraction as it exists. And I think, like any other attraction, it's great to start with the story for the ride. And I think that when you hear the story of the attraction, it's very layered, and there's a lot to it. It's very it's almost like a film in itself, the way that it
truly. Yeah.
Or like at least an animated short or something. So I'm going to paraphrase a little bit from the Disney Parks blog article that was recapping the story. So we understand the backstory of Tiana having a passion for cooking from a young age, dreaming of owning her own business one day. Her father, James, was a huge inspiration for that. He passed away in the war, and he was a war hero. And, so we then have the events of the film, and this takes place after the events of the film, where now Tiana has her own business, Tiana's Foods, which is an employee-owned cooperative that, according to Disney Parks blog article, combining her talents with those of the local community, Tiana has transformed an aging salt mine and built a beloved brand. And the endeavor began when Tiana purchased the salt mine and the area surrounding the large salt dome it operated from. With the help of her mother Eudora, Naveen, Lewis, and fellow owners of the cooperative, Tiana revived the old salt mine and the surrounding land, growing a wide array of vegetables, herbs, and spices for her recipes. And then we get to the specific, because that gives you a little bit of a backstory, but then we get to the specific elements of this particular attraction timeline that you're experiencing, where, for the Mardi Gras season, Tiana wants to thank her family and friends and the community for all their support by throwing this really big, spectacular party during Mardi Gras season. And here's what I'll read again from the Disney Parks blog article. When it turns out there's been a bit of a mix-up with the party preparations, Tiana invites us to meet her at Tiana's Foods to help with the missing ingredient for the party. When we arrive, we may see that Tiana spruced up the company's facilities with vibrant art from local artists. Food for the party is being prepared, and beignets are being loaded into crates for the celebration. And then picking up where that story left off, Tiana continues bringing people together with Tiana's Foods, another treasured meeting place to spend time together and celebrate a diverse community. Now, I have to admit, when I first heard that there was going to be a missing ingredient, I thought they meant that literally, and that we would have to like go find flour or like something
Me
that
too.
was forgotten, not knowing that the missing ingredient was going to be music. So when when we heard that, and even experiencing the attraction, I'm like, oh yeah, we're trying to go find music for Tiana's party. That's the missing ingredient. But when
it took a second for that to catch on, for sure.
Yeah, I feel like they should have like italicized ingredient or something to let us know that they were putting a play on words there. But anyway, so what are your thoughts about the story, both in terms of the way that it's written and the way that it's told in advance of with these Disney Parks blog articles and websites, and then how it was actually executed in the attraction?
I love the story of the attraction. And I actually think that that's maybe a little bit of a hot take. Like, I know that there's a lot of differing opinions in terms of the story of the attraction, for sure. I think that, and I don't know about you, but I know that like within my circle and then like with my audience, a lot of people had questions as to why they didn't just retell the story of the movie.
Yeah.
I'm in the boat where I love fresh and I love new, and I didn't necessarily feel the need to see a retelling of the story because we already know what that looks like. We already know how that goes. I think that a lot of people wanted the retelling of the story of the attraction specifically because they wanted Dr. Facilier within the attraction, which would have made sense. Like, it would have made sense, with that lift and then going down. I think it plays into the movie really well. But as the parent of two younger children, I try to imagine, how intense that could have been and how creepy, because truly Princess and the Frog is a pretty intense movie. Like, for an animated movie, it gets pretty creepy sometimes. And so anytime that you're involving, a voodoo witch doctor, it's going to get interesting. And so, I liked the fresh. I love the I don't want to say simplicity because there's so much depth to that story, but, the innocence of the story, and then just kind of the fun like twist on it, to me was a lot of fun. And I love that you're hearing about the story ahead of time, sure, if you're doing your research, but you're also learning about the story so quickly as soon as you enter the queue for this attraction. And I know that we could probably spend some time talking about the queue as well, but
we probably will.
yeah, I love it. I think that it's a good twist. And at one point, I feel like there was something announced about a new animated like short, or not a short, but a mini series for Tiana that was supposed to be in development.
Yes, that's actually a really good reminder. There is, and I forgot I think it's just called Tiana.
I think so too. So I actually think that like this attraction, it's interesting because so much of the time with Disney parks, we have IP that's released. We have a movie released or a show released, and then we build an attraction based off of that IP, or we have that IP inspire an attraction at a Walt Disney park. It'll be really interesting to see if some of the characters from this attraction end up in this mini series that's being developed surrounding Tiana's. I actually think that they could. Like, I think that in terms of the story, there's so much depth to, and they're so focused on the details of some of the new characters, like especially the new critters within this attraction, that I think that we could meet these critters not just in the Disney parks. I think that like the critters could show up streaming on Disney Plus eventually, because they really were very intentional about setting the tone for the story. So I don't know if that answers your original question or not, but
no, it does. It does.
Yeah,
and
I love it.
Yeah, I love the story too. We're talking about the what we'll call the book report version of the attraction, or the film being in an attraction, and that was really the classic approach with a lot of the Fantasyland rides, of just retelling the story, putting you in the middle of the story, and they've diverted from that with our favorite Star Wars Rise of the Resistance is kind of a departure from that, sort of placing you in the middle of the new trilogy with your own story that's based on a lot of the events that happen in the films. But Frozen Ever After was the first I keep going back to that attraction because it's very similar. That was really a great example of one that also was a sequel to the film. So you don't have the villains there. You don't have Kristoff. Kristoff. Oh my goodness. You don't have Kristoff is not a villain. Kristoff is there. You don't have Hans there. Like you just don't have the villains being present, and it's more of a celebration. And I felt like, especially for the thing that made sense to me was because of the audience, to your point, that this is going after. This is now welcoming in young kids, where not to say that Splash Mountain was never welcoming to young kids, but it was frightening, and it got pretty scary towards the end. In particular, the stakes were high. I know that's one of the pieces of criticism from people who do miss that, is that they feel like the stakes aren't the same, that it's not really there. But frankly, and I don't know about, we'll talk about our experience riding it, but when I was riding it, I didn't care. Like it didn't really feel like that was missing to me when I was riding the attraction. And I think that's also just naturally going to happen when we compare something's replacement to what it used to be, that we're going to start making these comparisons of like, well, what's missing and what's different. But when you forget about all that, I really did not even notice or care that Dr. Facilier was missing.
No, I didn't. But I'm not necessarily one of the people that particularly needed him in the attraction anyways.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, I think that the attraction itself, and I know you said we can talk more about this, but the attraction itself is just a good time from beginning to end. There's not, it doesn't, the struggle doesn't feel like a struggle. It's more a fun journey. And I like that about it. I like that we're having a good time. We're enjoying the journey of finding that missing ingredient, as opposed to, do I think it would have been cool to have Dr. Facilier at the top up there and then, you're going all the way down? Absolutely. I think that would have been brilliant. And I think that the Imagineers would have absolutely been able to crush it. But I don't miss it. I don't necessarily think that it's something that we needed for this attraction. So
yeah. It was not, I agree, it's not something that was needed. And it's also not something that the Imagineers just didn't think about. Like, it's not like they're like, oh, we forgot after years of development. How did we forget Dr. Facilier? It was obviously an intentional decision. And so that actually kind of brings me into a point that I do want to discuss, which is in your earlier conversation about representation, a big component of this attraction that I adore is not just the representation of people of color, but also the representation of New Orleans culture. Absolutely. And the story of, like, when you look at how integrated Leah Chase's story is into this experience and New Orleans culture is into this experience, you gain such a deeper appreciation for it. And of course, for those who don't know, Leah Chase is the real life inspiration for Tiana. And so her family was a big part of the development of this attraction with Walt Disney Imagineering from the beginning. And, there are some aspects of this ride that are fantastic when it comes to the its development. So I'll just rattle off a few things. So first of all, like I said, Leah Chase's family was a huge part of the development of this attraction and working with Walt Disney Imagineering, to the point where Leah's daughter Stella, who was a key contact for Walt Disney Imagineering throughout the whole process, was named an honorary Imagineer this year. And then Leah's other daughter, Leah Chase Jr., is actually featured in the queue singing Louis Armstrong's "Do You Know What It Means to Miss New Orleans," which was, to tie into another thing, a reimagined version by Terrence Blanchard, who's a Grammy Award winner and, more importantly, played the trumpet part of Louis in The Princess and the Frog. In fact, Terrence arranged the entire cue loop for this attraction, so created new music. So Louis the alligator created the music for the queue for Princess and the Frog, which is mind-blowing and awesome. They also featured a lot of artwork from New Orleans artist Sharika Mahdi, who was her artwork inspired the attraction from the beginning. She painted a beautiful mural that's displayed on 2 walls outside the attraction, and Disney commissioned 4 paintings from her for inside the queue. So there are 4 new paintings that she created specifically for this attraction. And then Grammy Award winner PJ Morton from New Orleans wrote Special Spice, which is the theme song, which we'll also, of course, have to talk about. But there's just so many layers that tie into New Orleans culture, the musical genres that are represented, the folks that were involved with this, the fact that even the original voices of the characters from the film lent their voices to the attraction as well. Because especially you talked about representation, I'm curious if there's anything that stuck out to you in terms of the ties back to New Orleans culture or anything else that you really appreciate about some of those details from the experience.
Absolutely. So, like I mentioned before, my wife, her family, a lot of them come from New Orleans, and so my father-in-law, he makes a mean gumbo. He makes beignets every Christmas morning.
I'm supremely jealous.
and so it's like, even down to the garden that's outside in the queue, and even walking through the queue and seeing some of the storage shelves and some of the ingredients that are sitting on those shelves. Those are the ingredients that make up the food that represents New Orleans culture, and have you ever had the opportunity to visit New Orleans before?
I have. I have once. It was about 15 years ago, though, so it's been a while.
We went for Jazz Fest one year, my wife and I, before we had kids, when we got to those were the days where weekend trips looked a lot different than what they look like now, for sure. But
yeah,
we got to go out there for Jazz Fest one year, and it was cool because we got to see some of the places that her family had come from, as well as just really kind of sit in New Orleans culture and appreciate it and kind of absorb it as much as possible. And Jazz Fest is an excellent opportunity to do that, for sure. But so even I think the biggest thing for me is the food, I think just seeing the ingredients that make up gumbo being grown in the area, or like I said, just the storage shelves have I think there's praline, different things sitting around. You've got pecans, bags of pecans sitting in different places. All of these things that definitely they're the fabric, and food in New Orleans is such a big deal. It's some of the best food in the States, in my personal opinion. But yeah, I think that's the thing that stuck out to me the most, is just the excitement that I had in seeing the ingredients that make up the food that is New Orleans, and not just in the queue, but even in the shop outside of the attraction. You've got a pot of gumbo sitting on the fire that the critters are putting together, and so it's just, I think it's so cool. The details that they placed into that queue are next level, for sure. And honestly, we've got some really cool queues around Walt Disney World, for sure. But I think that, in my personal opinion, this one is packed full of details, unlike anything else that we have, for sure.
Yeah, the detail in this queue is amazing, and this is a good transition to let's talk about the queue, because I had this was the good thing and the bad thing about how I experienced this attraction, which was the D23 Gold member event for this, which I was so happy I got tickets for, because that went so fast. But I flew through the queue every single time, because there was no wait for the attraction throughout the entire event, which was amazing. So that was the good and the bad. I mean, the good was I didn't have to wait on limited rides as much as I wanted, but the bad was, normally when you're waiting in queue, you kind of stop and look around and see what's around you. So I had to do my best to try to photograph and document, and then just go back and look at it later. And of course, I'll go back and experience the attraction again on my next visit. But yeah, walking through the queue, what were your thoughts?
So just for my personal experience, the first time that I got to ride, I went with my friend Tim. We host a podcast together.
You could say Tim Tracker. I think that's you could flex that you
no. Good guy. Huge fan of that guy. We do a podcast together called That Tracks Podcast. But Tim and I got to ride together. We were able to go with a friend who's a cast member. And while this was not necessarily the most positive thing, it actually worked to our advantage, because it's not a secret that the attraction experienced a lot of issues as it was opening, and there were a lot of moments where it would go down for a series of time. We were in the queue outside, just outside of like so it hasn't really changed much from Splash Mountain, but you queue outdoors and then you eventually move indoors and start queuing inside as well. And there's a lot of cool details inside, but also outdoors. We got stuck for like 2 hours sitting outside, waiting to see if the attraction was going to open back up. And in that 2 hours, a lot of people ended up leaving. So our queue experience was changing a bit too, because we continued to kind of like move forward. So we got to spend a lot of time outdoors and just kind of absorbing some of the details out there, but also just listening to the music that plays. On repeat out there, and there's quite a few songs. So the way that it works is, and you might have the specific details in front of you, I don't necessarily have them in front of me, but it's a radio station broadcasting out of New Orleans, and the music that's played, it's all jazz, but there are some songs from the movie that are played throughout the queue as well. So just listening to that in and of itself is a great time. They did a phenomenal job incorporating that into the outdoor space for sure, especially because the way that the queue works outside, there is times where people do spend a decent amount of time outdoors. So it's nice that they have something to listen to while they're out there. But then when you move indoors, again, so many details, and not just. So again, if you're listening and you remember sort of how it flows with the queue space, whether you've ridden Tiana's yet or have ridden Splash Mountain, but you start downstairs and then you weave your way around and you end up going upstairs. And so the downstairs space is beautiful. Again, there's a lot of like there's actually some Easter eggs, which is pretty cool. There's an Easter egg for Splash Mountain. There's a little bear and fox and rabbit sitting on one of the shelves. There's steamboats sitting on the shelves is cool, which is pretty cool to see. There are a lot of names. There's like lists of names. You pass by Tiana's desk, and then around her desk, there's like different lists of things that she'll need, and then different assignments that different people have. I know that like some of those lists have names of some of the Imagineers that help design and build the attraction. And then I think there's also names of those who acted in the movie as well. I might be mistaken on that, but I love that kind of stuff. I love it. I'm a sucker for Easter eggs. I'm a bit of a Swiftie guy, so Easter eggs are our forte. And so when you pass by, I was looking for so many specific things because we were getting so much time in this area, down to I was looking at the clock and I was like, why is the clock set on that time? I wonder what that means, you know? And some of the things we may never know, but I do think that everything is like intentional and with detail in there for sure. So that was pretty cool to see and get to experience and just absorb that. And then when you go upstairs, I'm sure you noticed this as you're walking down the hallways upstairs. There's all kinds of photos and letters from Tiana's father, or of photos of her father, and that just pulls on the heartstrings. I mean, to know, that that's why Tiana's doing what she's doing, like that's her motivation, and you get to see a glimpse into what their relationship looked like from the film. I got emotional seeing some of those letters from her dad as he was like serving in the military, and just pictures of the two of them together. That was super special. But yeah, and then, I mean, even more, you go around the corner and you see Tiana's kitchen. There's a tray of beignets on the table inside of the kitchen, and those look phenomenal. I don't know about you, and maybe you moved through quickly, so I don't know if you caught this or not, but Tim mentioned smelling beignets as he walked around the corner. I have never fully grasped that. I don't know if it's like a placebo effect where people see the beignets and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, those look amazing. Now I can smell them too. I don't know. I don't know if that's ever been confirmed or not.
The only thing I have smelled is that Disney water smell.
Yeah, same.
Like that,
I'm like, where are you getting beignets out of this right now? But
maybe he caught on. He might
have noticed it. Yeah,
his olfactory senses might be heightened, and maybe he just noticed something I didn't. But yeah, I did move through pretty quickly. But I loved the and when you were talking, I was just kind of going through some of the photos that I did take, and to your point, like this is one of the letters that is on the wall. Dear Tiana, how are you doing, sweetheart? And this is written in cursive and handwriting, so it's gonna you might hear me stumble as I'm reading this. You taking good care of Mama over there? Missing you too. Something fierce. What I wouldn't give to be back home, cooking up some gumbo, our gumbo, with you by my side. Then you and I could serve up a good old-fashioned potluck. Lord, what I wouldn't give. Anyway, I just had to let you know I was thinking about you. Love you always, Daddy. And there's just like a whole bunch of those alongside his photos. It does wreck you.
Yeah.
And what's amazing, I don't know if this is just my daughter remembering that I went to experience the attraction, but I showed her because she likes looking at pictures on my phone, and she saw the picture of the kitchen, and she's like, "Oh, Tiana's kitchen," and I'm like, "Yeah." So like the details add up, or she just remembers.
Well, and even on so when you walk into the kitchen, there's sort of like an island sitting in there that the beignets are sitting on.
Yeah.
But underneath that, there's a giant pot. And someone, I don't remember who pointed this out to me, but they pointed it out to me and they said, look, it's her dad's gumbo pot.
You're right.
And so
I have a photo right here.
That's her dad's gumbo pot. So just to be able to like be in the queue, see a letter about how the fact that he wants so badly to be with her to be able to cook gumbo together, and then you turn around the corner and there's her dad's gumbo pot. Like, I just love that so much. It's such incredible attention to detail. But I am fascinated. Maybe we'll have to do a poll one day or something to see if people actually smell beignets in there, or if that was just Tim's imagination. I don't know.
Yeah. After enough people get to experience it, I'll have to put a poll up in my story to your point and see if that's up there. And they do start weaving in the story about the attraction, and even in Tiana's kitchen, right front and center is a sort of chalkboard that says, "Don't forget celebration at my house tonight. Everybody's welcome. See you there, Tiana."
There's newspaper articles sitting on her desk downstairs that talk about the Mardi Gras season and how her and Naveen are going to be hosting a Mardi Gras party. Even some of the articles say that every jazz band in New Orleans is officially booked for the Mardi Gras season. And so
yes,
it's setting the precedence of the attraction. And it's hard because I don't know that just the average guest would be able to see that and like, really, if they haven't read the articles or have the information that they need, I don't know that every guest would pick up those details and those like little nuances. But I think that regardless of whether they do or not, once they're on the actual attraction, it sets the story really well, which I'm sure we'll talk about as well. But
yeah, we'll talk. We're gonna jump right into that in a second. The fact, I also did want to go back to the queue loop because I love that it is an hour loop. It was, like I said, developed by Terrence Blanchard, and then you do hear, and I walked through the queue so fast, but like it's very it reminded me very much of Jungle Cruise queue, very similar time period, different genres, but a little bit, not exactly the same time period, but sort of that old time radio chatter that you hear, and then the news announcements about the Mardi Gras celebration and the party that Tiana's having. So you get some music to fit the era, and then you get some little radio chatter to get a better idea of what it is that the story of the attraction is going to be. But I agree, if you're not aware of the story, you might not know before you step in the boat that you're going to help Tiana find music or a band for the party, or help Lewis specifically find that music for the band. But you definitely, as you're writing it, that story unfolds, and you get a better idea about that, even going up the main lift up the mountain. But all right, let's get to the ride. And we've been dancing around the attraction without talking about it. So
I do have to make a quick note too, just because it's summertime in Florida. When you turn the corner out of Tiana's kitchen and you enter those salt mines,
it is air conditioning.
Oh my gosh, it is like next level, and it existed with Splash Mountain as well. So I'm thankful that they were somehow able to preserve those air conditioner units or whatever they're doing to blast that AC. But it is in my opinion, one of the coolest, literally, spots at Walt Disney World. And if you hit a certain moment where you're standing under one of those fans, I mean, that is an attraction in and of itself. It is a beautiful thing, really. So
it is, yeah. That AC in there is just so powerful. It like gets you nice and cool before you get on the ride.
Get soaked.
Yeah. Anyway, so what was your? We'll talk about repeat experiences, but before we get to that, there's been all this hype. We had years of hearing about this, of 4 years of hearing about this attraction. Now you finally step in this boat and ride it for the first time. Getting off the attraction or even riding through it the first time, what was your initial reaction to it?
Total joy and excitement. And the day that we got to ride, like I said, we sat in the queue for about 2 hours waiting to see if we were going to be able to get on it or not. And what ended up happening was they dumped the queue. And so we had to leave. We waited. I think it ended up actually being a total of 2.5 hours, waited in that queue, and then ultimately had to leave because they just needed to reset some things. And so we left. And as soon as we walked around the corner, we walked up the bridge and saw that the attraction was running again. And so we were just like, what just happened? Like what is going on right now? After years of waiting, you get to this moment where you wake up in the morning and you're like, today is the day I'm going to ride Tiana's Bayou Adventure. And then you get there and you get stuck in the queue for 2.5 hours, and then you leave and you turn around and you're like, people are riding it right now. So that was a bummer, but it worked out for us. We were able to get back into the queue and ride. But I think just like you said, years of waiting and then hours of literally that day waiting to be able to sit down, like the energy was next level. Tim and I were on cloud nine. We were so excited. And we carried that excitement throughout the entire attraction. And like I said earlier, the way that the story is told, it keeps that excitement happening. Like it keeps your energy high because that's the energy of the attraction. It's musical, it's fun, it's just a good time. Like you're having fun, you're singing along to the songs that you're familiar with and that you know. And as soon as I stepped off the attraction, I felt like a kid again. Like I said earlier, in terms of attraction, like a solid attraction at Walt Disney World to me is an attraction that makes you feel like a child again. And I had that childlike rush and joy of getting to ride, that going down that plunge, going down that drop. It transports you back into your years where that was the coolest thing ever for you. And so I loved it. I think it's incredible. So.
Yeah. How did your family react when you got to ride with them for the first time?
Yeah, so that was what I'm describing as the first time that I rode with Tim, and then I was able to take them. So I have two boys. They're 8 and 6. They just had birthdays this past weekend, so that's fresh and new. When they rode, they were 7 and 5. But
Happy birthday to them both.
Thank you, thank you. They loved it so much. They had an absolute blast. My wife was a huge fan. The entire family is definitely sold on the attraction. And it's one that they are going to ask, especially my youngest, he's going to ask to do every single time that we go to Magic Kingdom now. He is hooked on it for sure. My oldest, he loves it as well. He's definitely a coaster junkie. Like he just loves roller coasters so much. He's a thrill seeker. And I think that speaks to the attraction as well. Because he's such a massive thrill seeker, I actually don't know if Tiana's gives him as much thrill as he's always looking for. Like it definitely has its big moment with the drop for sure. But I think that he probably wants like 5 or 6 of those to happen in his idea of what an attraction looks like, which is good. I think that like it's the right amount of thrill for a family. I was able to ride it this past weekend or 2 weekends ago. My whole family was in town, and my parents had not been to Magic Kingdom in like 10 years. And I don't think that they had been on Splash Mountain for years before that. But like I said, it's an attraction that we grew up doing a lot as a family, and my parents were able to get on with us and ride with their grandkids, and just seeing their reaction to that drop again was really special and really cool, and reinventing the story of the attraction. They were sold on it and hooked on it as well. So
yeah, I loved riding this for the first time too. And what we talked about earlier, that idea of, and you just mentioned, a joyful experience, was really what I experienced too. And I also was very aware of, and you might have been as well, the reactions from those around me too, because it's not just, especially podcasting about this, I want to know, how are people reacting to this while they're there? And I stood by the bridge at the edge of the attraction for a while, just watching guests ride the attraction, come down that big drop around that turn, and it was met with the exact same reaction I always remembered. They're laughing, they're smiling, they're just so happy to be on this ride. And then I saw guests of all ages coming off that attraction and saying, I want to do that again. And, there was an older gentleman who was probably in his 60s, maybe 70s, who rode it 5-6 times in a row. He loved it so much. Same thing with kids, parents, just everybody who came off that attraction was wanting to go back and ride it again, which to me is a sign of a good attraction, right?
Absolutely.
No one, I didn't hear anybody come off that and say, you know what? I don't know if I do this again. I'm kind of done with it. Everybody that I saw or spoke to had rave reviews about this ride.
No,
and maybe it was just the feeling that the mountain is back, the same ride they always remembered with this fresh new theme and storyline. But I saw nothing but really positive feedback from those who were physically riding it.
Yeah, it's just fun. So I got to ride with a cast member for my first time, and then my family got to ride during our annual pass holder preview. Both of those took place before the D23 event, and we were actually at the same event, just didn't get the chance to cross paths, which is wild.
I know,
because
crazy. And it was not that big of an event, so it was unbelievable. I didn't even see you.
Yeah, but the D23 event, our mission became, how many times can we ride this in this couple hour window that we have access to this attraction? And we rode it 7 times that night. And the boys never got sick of it. They would have kept going all night if they had the opportunity to, because they loved it so much. And because the actual attraction has so many details as well in it, similar to the queue, there's so many details packed into the attraction. I feel like you can ride it several times, and maybe we'll get into this conversation about re-riding, but you can ride it several times and still pick up on details that you didn't get to see the first couple of times that you rode it. I still notice things. I think I've been on it 11 or 12 times at this point, and I still notice things that I haven't seen yet. And I think that's another beautiful thing about an attraction, if it gives you that ability to always have something different.
Yeah, well, you've definitely far exceeded how many times I went on this. I was just there for that one event. I was kind of spread between the attraction and my family, who could not ride the attraction. Neither one of them could ride it. Joanna being 8.5 months pregnant and Maggie being too short to ride it. So it was really just me, and I didn't want to just do that by myself all evening. But I mean, for you, I'm curious if you enjoy the experience more during the day or after dark, because it also has a very different ambience and like any other Disney attraction after dark.
That was, I think, one of the coolest things about getting to participate in the D23 event. And just a plug for D23, the fact that they do those things is just incredible. They don't have to give us the opportunity to do those things. And I know a lot of people get frustrated because those events fill up so quickly, which is totally understandable. There's just such a massive demand for them. But the fact that we even had the opportunity to do that in and of itself was such a huge blessing. So kudos to the entire team at D23 for giving us that. But yeah, what's so cool about it, and I say that because that's the second time that I got to do a D23 event for a new attraction. The other one that I got to do was for Guardians of the Galaxy. And when we went to that event, we thought we were just going to get to ride it one time. And when we got there, they said, you have open access to this. Ride it as many times as you want to.
Like a private party, basically. We just paid for a private party as a group.
Exactly, which is exactly what this event for D23 felt like with Tiana's Bayou Adventure. And so we went in knowing okay, we're going to ride this thing as many times as we can. And also because of the hours that the event fell in, we knew that we were going to be able to get the opportunity to ride it as the sun was setting and after the sun had set. And specifically, we tried to time it to where we were riding during fireworks, which is always a special way. I mean, I think that if you get to ride any attraction that goes outdoors at Magic Kingdom during fireworks, it elevates the experience to different levels. I think Mine Train during fireworks is one of my favorite things in the world. But so we did it. We got to ride it at night, and I definitely think that it elevates the experience because specifically when you're going up the lift, and during the daytime as you're going up the lift, you see the light from the day shining in at the top of the lift, and there's cool effects with lasers and mists that are also happening. And I still think that they're incredible during the daytime, but when it is dark and there's not as much light coming up from the opening at the top of the lift, and it's darkness, those lasers and mist shine that much more, and it adds to the ambiance. And then the attraction at night is just beautiful. It is the lighting that they've put into the bayou. that can be seen whether you're riding or you're just standing on the bridge looking at it. It is just, it's beautiful. The fireflies that are in the bushes, the lights inside of the water, the lights in the trees. It's all done really, really well. So I actually think I prefer riding this during the evening just because I think that it elevates the lighting experience for sure.
Absolutely. Um, yeah, I unfortunately didn't get to experience it after dark. I wish I did, but not for this event. I'll have to go back and experience it after dark. But yeah, one of the things that a lot impressed me about it, there is so much detail that's in there. I love the music to your point earlier, the critters, and the fact that there are so many very specific critters. They each have their own personality. They each band performs. It's a Zydeco, Rara, and Afro-Cuban genres that are represented. So the fact that those genres are represented and the characters themselves each have their own distinct personalities that you can learn about, even if you don't know them, and they're still very cute critters that you get to enjoy as you pass by. But the animatronics, especially Lewis and Tiana, were awesome.
Yeah.
Very, the very new animatronic technology, in line with like Hondo Onaka style fluid movements, just really impressive, realistic. Still drawing some inspiration from the animated look, especially of Tiana. And then the finale scene is just a lot of fun. Like you enter and you're feeling very festive at that point because they've built in this joyful atmosphere, and then you've had a little bit of thrills with going down those drops, and now you get to celebrate with this Mardi Gras party. All the animatronics being represented there. They do have the screen effects that are used are really for background, for depth, very similar to Rise of the Resistance. It sort of adds to it rather than being the primary focus of the experience. But yeah, there's just, I feel like to your point, you could ride this attraction a dozen times and every single time find something new that you didn't see.
I think like there was criticism too, even with the usage of screens in this attraction. I don't fully understand that criticism. I think that they're appropriately placed for sure. Yeah. But one of the screens that's utilized, and as a part of the story, you're shrunk down to the size of almost like the frogs, which is pretty fun because then the frogs become a lot larger. But what happens is there's a moment where Tiana and Lewis are actually looking down at you. And one of the like small details there that I appreciated, this is an animated version of Tiana and Lewis. And as opposed to pulling from the animation style of the movie, they actually use the animation style of the animatronics that are in the attraction, because there is slight differences in terms of like what the actual animatronic of Tiana looks like compared to what she looks like in the movie. You have a 3D Tiana in front of you, which I think are absolutely beautiful. Those are the moments where I wish that like Walt could experience like the development of animatronics. I think he would just be so excited about it. But yeah, so I liked the fact that they could have went with an animation style that looked like Tiana that people recognize from the movies, but instead they kept it to the. It makes sense, obviously, but they kept it to the animatronic style at the actual attraction. So
yeah, well, that definitely makes a huge difference. It ties it. It keeps it really cleanly related to the rest of the attraction. So I agree. It's those little details that definitely make a difference. And while it's been impressive to have like a giant Tiana animatronic, it obviously made a lot more sense to put a screen there.
No, I think it's so cool.
Yeah, it was very tastefully done. So is there any other, as we're sort of wrapping up talking about the attraction, any other specific feedback or things we haven't discussed that you wanted to call out about Tiana's Bayou Adventure?
You said it, but the final scene is just beautiful. And I think that like I'm so glad that they nailed that final scene, in my opinion, because I think that the final scene in Splash Mountain was another really iconic moment for people. I think that people really looked forward to having that zippity doodah moment, when they finished the attraction. And I think that they did that well with Tiana's Bayou Adventure. And there's an Easter egg in that scene, which is, it's hard. And I think that this is something that like you would notice if you do ride it multiple times, because the first time that you ride it, you're just going to feel overwhelmed by everything that is happening in that final scene. There are characters everywhere to pay attention to, but your eyes are going to be drawn to what's ahead of you, and then as you sort of kind of go around the corner, you're going to be looking to your right because that's where Tiana and Naveen and Lewis are with all of the critters. On the left hand side, Tiana's mom, and I always forget Tiana's friend's name. Dottie?
Charlotte.
Charlotte. Where did that come from? Charlotte and Tiana's mom are
Dottie's
standing.
from something.
Why is that in my head? Charlotte and Tiana's mom are standing there watching. They're there to greet you as you ride by, but your eyes kind of move away from them pretty quickly because your eyes are drawn to what's happening on the right hand side. But if you look to your left, there's a plate of beignets sitting on the table behind them, and there's a Mickey beignet sitting on there, which I thought was absolutely brilliant. Mickey beignets are something that's iconic, obviously. Disney Parks fans are loyal to their Mickey beignets, and I thought it was cool that they found a way to incorporate a hidden Mickey and it being a beignet onto the attraction. So
yeah, that is very cool. And of course the other specific thing that's part of the final scene is the theme song to the attraction, Special Spice, which whenever I had it stuck in my head the rest of the day. It's one that follows you outside the attraction.
It's so fun. And the fact that we got like an iconic, like a specific song for the attraction in and of itself, I think is such a massive win. I love it. I'm such a big fan.
And
I'm embarrassed that I didn't know Charlotte.
It definitely it's a great song. And like I said, the fact that we have the real characters and Tiana is singing it. It's just it's great. And you can listen to that and the Q loop on Spotify and Apple Music, which is, I love that Disney's been doing that lately.
So good.
They just released Country Bear Musical Jamboree too for that attraction.
I will be listening to that for the foreseeable future. That is another massive win. I know that this episode's not about that, but I got to experience that as well.
It's right next door.
Phenomenal. Yeah.
It's so important because anyone like my daughter who's not tall enough to ride Tiana's Bayou Adventure, that's an attraction we get to do, or Thunder Mountain. That's an attraction that we get to do in Frontierland together, which is a lot of fun. And even without that, it's one that I enjoy doing. So whether or not you're tall enough, it's another great attraction to experience.
And your daughter will appreciate it because it's got music that she'll probably be able to recognize. So.
Definitely. She definitely will. Yeah. So last question for this episode is, other than I want to make sure people know where to go to follow you as well. But before we get to that, I do my best to avoid the social media commentary, because to me, most of the people commenting on social media, 99% of the comments that you see are for people who have not actually experienced it. And like anything else at Disney, I say this time and time and time and time again, what you see in a video cannot be conveyed. Or the way around. What you experience in person cannot be conveyed in a video. It's like getting the spark notes for a film. Like until you actually sit down and watch a film from beginning to end and experience it, especially in a theater, it just doesn't have the same impact as reading the synopsis on IMDb and then commenting on it from there. And a video just does not do an attraction justice. So for me, there's a lot of negativity bias in social media. But for anyone who is, let's say, skeptical or hesitant about the attraction because of what they are reading on social media or in blogs that get tons of clicks and headlines and all that sort of clickbait stuff that's out there. What would you say to those people who are skeptical?
I don't know. I feel like go into it obviously with an open mind. I would remind people to do that. Like experience things for yourself. Don't let other people tell you how you're supposed to experience something, for sure. And then I also would look at it from whose opinion on the internet do you trust? Do you typically sort of align with? And I think in my personal experience, and obviously I'm very familiar with people within this community that are reporting on theme parks, that are talking about theme park experiences, and vloggers and bloggers and all of the sorts. And from what I gather, the majority of us have had very positive experiences with Tiana's Bayou Adventure. And so we're not lying to you, I don't say all of this because I was told to say this by somebody. If there's something that I am not a huge fan of, then I will very politely make that known, but I I just I don't fully understand why there's such a negativity around certain things. Like I don't know where that fully comes from. It makes me sad. But I tend to approach things very open-mindedly, and I try to approach things with sort of just a positive spirit. And I would just remind people to have that. I don't think that it's going to be needed for very long though. Like it would take, in my mind, because it's such a happy and joyful experience, it would take someone really like needing this, approaching it with a very pessimistic attitude in order to not enjoy this experience with this attraction. One of my friends was a huge fan of Splash Mountain and was very sad to be seeing it go away. And he still likes Tiana's Bayou Adventure, you know, and he's even one that was critical of the fact that we didn't have Dr. Facilier in this attraction, and he still found enjoyment in it. And I think it would take a very grumpy person to not find some joy in this attraction for sure, because they do. It's so lighthearted, it's fun, it's just a good time. So
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I mean, I pretty much said my spiel in the beginning here, but just don't go by everything you read online. It's a lot of that is designed to get clicks, and what gets clicks these days isn't necessarily what is always genuine. And I find that, you know, like I said earlier, I always judge something by the reactions of those who experience it themselves, rather than those who are judging it from afar, who aren't getting the chance to experience it. I hope you will. Like, I hope everyone will get the experience to go and experience it and form those opinions. And there may be a set of people who might not enjoy it, but that goes with anything in life. And I think that this one is, you know, everyone that I saw was having an amazing time, enjoyed this attraction. I enjoyed this attraction. I can't wait to go back. And
you can't base your opinions on, I mean, shoot, if people base their opinions on me based on what some people said about me on the internet, then like, man, I'd be in for a hard time, because it's true. Like that sometimes people are just trolling just to troll, and those exist on the internet just for me personally sometimes. And so it's like, I hope that people don't believe everything that they see, like, and you know, the things that people say about me on the internet. I hope that they don't like take that to heart and believe it, because some of the stuff is really hurtful. So, you know, I think that about most things. I think that that's an approach in life where it's just like, walk into it with expecting a positive experience, and if you don't have it, that's okay. Like, it's okay I don't think that everybody has to like everything. There's attractions at Walt Disney World that I am not a fan of and that I do not do, but you know, they're not for me, and that's okay. So
yeah, I absolutely agree. Well, speaking of sending people your way, let's send some positive people your way. So where can people go to follow you and listen to your show?
Yeah, so I do a podcast with Tim Tracker. He's been doing this thing for a long time, so I was very blessed and excited and humbled when he asked me to start a podcast with him. But that is called That Tracks Podcast. You can find it wherever you stream your podcast, but we're also on YouTube, so you can check it out on there. And then I also run my own Instagram account. The handle is The Theme Park Dad. I have a lot of fun doing that. It's wild. I'm sure you've probably had a similar experience with this, but it was a fun passion project that I started, and it really was kind of just rooted in like wanting to share tips and tricks about Walt Disney World, and then also just being a dad in this space. There's not a ton of us in this realm, and so it's fun to bring that perspective and that dynamic. And so it's been cool. It's been cool to see how it's developed. It's been cool to see how it's grown, and just getting the opportunity to do things like this that I'm so passionate about, sit on a podcast and talk about Tiana's Bayou Adventure for an hour, is just a really cool thing. And so, yeah, I'm blessed, and I'm constantly humbled and honored to be in this space, and I appreciate you having me on. So
yeah, I feel the same way. Thanks for coming on as a guest, and I'll make sure people know exactly where to go to find you. But Nick, thanks for being on the show. Thanks for talking with me for an hour 15 about Tiana's Bayou Adventure. And one of these days, We will actually get to meet up in the
Yes.
parks. We've crossed paths at so many events that just never had the chance to really hang out in person. So we'll have to make an effort.
We'll plan it. We'll plan it for sure the next time you're down. You've got exciting things on the horizon though, so it'll be a little while, I imagine, before you make the journey back to Walt Disney World. But when you do, we'll hang out for sure.
Yeah, I will not be hearing Special Spice for several months at this point, but other than on repeat on Spotify.
Streaming.
That's good.
Yeah, there you go.
Welcome back to Imagination Central. As you disembark, please remember to remain fully seated until the podcast comes to a complete stop. Then gather your belongings and watch your head and step as you exit. After you exit the episode, I encourage you to engage with the show by following Imagination Skyway on your favorite social media app. And if you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to share it with anyone who might enjoy our discussion today and leave us a rating or review in your favorite podcast app. If you're listening on Spotify or already following us on social media, be sure to answer our question associated with this episode, which is for you to tell me what you enjoy the most or are most looking forward to when you experience Tiana's Bayou adventure. In addition, be sure to explore Imagination Skyway on the Patreon app or at patreon.com/Imagination Skyway, where you can enjoy bonus content, join a private community of listeners, and help support the show. Our Patreon members literally have kept the podcast running since 2017, and it is not hyperbole, as I always say, that without our Patreon subscribers, the show would not be possible. And so, as always, I do want to extend my sincerest thanks to every Patreon member listening, past or present or future. Thank you so much for riding aboard Imagination Skyway, and remember, if we can dream it, we can do it.